You will likely not agree with this list, but that is the point. Let's talk about your rankings in the comments, because with The Evil Dead Rise being the 5th entry in what might be the best franchise in horror that does not feature a single bad film, any of these films could easily be on a person's list at number 1, and it would not be a wrong answer. In 1978, 3 friends, fearing for what their future may hold for them, came together to take a chance on putting together a feature-length horror film that everyone wanted to see. Bruce Campbell stated, "The message was clear. Keep the pace fast and furious, and once the horror starts, never let up. The gorier, the merrier became our prime directive." Understanding that they did not have the funds to finance their film, they filmed the prototype film within the woods over a 3-day weekend for $1,600. A film that saw a group of 4 friends unwittingly dig up an Indian burial ground that unleashes horrific spirits and demons. A year later, Sam Raimi, Robert Tappert, and Bruce Campbell secured investors their budget and began to work on The Evil Dead, forever changing the horror world. Here are the Evil Dead films ranked from 5 to 1 that you may
or may not
agree with.
Number 5. Evil Dead Rise delivers on gore and feature, and a soon-to-be talked-about scene with a cheese grater for years to come on countless YouTube channel lists. Like the original, it is likely to become the product of many children's nightmares. It does lack one key element, a standout lead protagonist like Ash or Mia. Beth is intended to be just that, but she just falls short of successfully having the chainsaw passed on to her as the next protagonist in the franchise. Beth is an estranged aunt by choice, a guitar technician for a band traveling the world who only returns to the States to visit her sister after discovering that she needs her to help her get through the next phase of her life. After an earthquake reveals a hidden bank vault under their building and her nephew discovers a volume of the Book of the Dead inside, Beth is thrust into being the hero, where she must defend her nieces and nephew against their possessed mother while trapped in their apartment. While we get amazing deadites, lots of blood, great gore, shotguns, chainsaws, and a well-told story that explains the Evil Dead universe to be able to live on without Ash, we don't have a protagonist to inherit the throne. Number 4.
Evil Dead 2 might be the most important film in the franchise and comes in at number 4 on our list, only showing you how strong every film is in the franchise. Distribution right disputes over the first film and investor Dino De Laurentiis' insistence on making another Cabin in the Woods film versus what Sam Raimi had originally intended to be the Army of Darkness. Evil Dead 2 has to retcon several components from the previous film in order to move the story forward, since they did not have access to the previous film's footage. Evil Dead 2 is a comedic entry into the franchise that expands on the Deadite's characteristics and transforms Ash into the slapstick character that we all know and love today. Unlike the previous film, Linda is possessed in the opening of the film, forcing Ash to kill her. However, she returns from her makeshift grave to attack him and pass the evil inside of her into Ash's soon-to-be possessed hand that he is forced to cut off and replace with the single most iconic protagonist weapon in the horror genre today, the chainsaw hand. With a bigger budget, Raimi is able to bring bigger and better effects without abandoning the style that was used in the first film. Some might even say that The Evil Dead 2 is far more superior than the first one. The only negative that I can possibly say about this is that some of the side characters are a bit meh.
Number 3. Who would have thought that you could have an Evil Dead film without Ashley Joanna Williams? But the 2013 remake or reboot of Evil Dead, directed by Fede Alvarez, exceeded expectations and is one of the best remake/reboots ever made. While we do return to the cabin in the woods concept, this time it is not a weekend getaway to party, but a trip to help Mia overcome her heroin addiction. Like in the original, one of the friends discovers the Naturum Demonto, a volume of the Book of the Dead in the basement. He cannot resist reading some of the passages from it, which sparks Mia to begin seeing visions of a demonic doppelganger in the woods. Fede Alvarez uses his bigger budget and advancements in practical effects work to deliver a compelling story with iconic scenes that will make you cringe in your seat. It also introduces Evil Dead fans to a world without Ash, with a worthy successor, Mia, who despite all of her flaws has become an iconic final girl that you can't help but root for. Number 2.
The first Evil Dead comes in at number 2 on our list, despite it being one of the few horror films to scare its audience to the point where many had to clutch a crucifix to their chest just to make it through the night to the next day. Okay, well, maybe not many viewers, a few people, so I'm told. Okay, it was just me. Evil Dead became a sleeper hit that took the world by storm, spawning a new subgenre in horror, inspiring new filmmakers and spawning countless copycat films. Like Halloween, Evil Dead was groundbreaking in horror as it introduced us to the shaky cam effects with the undead camera that we see move through the woods, elevating the evil force coming for its victims. Raimi and crew slowly lure you into the film and then quickly turn up the horror with terrifying scenes like Cheryl being attacked by trees, or her becoming possessed and being able to call out the cards in Shelley's hands during the game of spades, any of the cellar scenes, and Linda rocking back and forth on the floor while possessed. It's easy to see why I will never visit a cabin in the woods with friends on a weekend getaway.
Number 1. While the first Evil Dead may have scarred some as children, Army of the Darkness is the film that you don't necessarily need to have seen the previous 2 films to enjoy. In fact, it is one of the films that we included in our list of horror films to introduce horror to our kids as they grew up. It is the action-adventure film of the Ash trilogy that declares his rightful place as king of the horror genre. Army of Darkness transports us back in time to the Middle Ages, where Ash arrogantly sparks a Deadite war led by an evil version of himself. It not only packs in action and comedy with horror, but there are endless quotes that any fan of the franchise can easily pick out without having to name the film it is associated with. While filming Army of Darkness was grueling to shoot and encountered several post-production problems that prolonged its release, Army of Darkness is a film for every level of horror fan, newbie or veteran, that is a must-watch and can be enjoyed by all.
Do you agree with the order of these movies on our list? What is your ranking of these films? I have to tell you right now, as we mentioned in our review, that the Evil Dead franchise is probably the best franchise, pound for pound. Every single film, it is good. Now, The Evil Dead Rise, like we talked about in the review, it's good, but it has a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it really has a lot to live up to, especially when you have Ash and then kind of like his female replacement would have been Mia. Beth didn't come close to either one of them, so that's an issue. Maybe later on they can find someone who does kind of meet those standards. Could you put that away?
I can't. It's stuck on my hand.
I figured it would be. Your hand is way too big for it.
Anyway, so like we said, go ahead, drop in the comments, let us know how you rank these films. I honestly can't say there's a franchise out there that is better than this one, and it's not my favorite franchise, it's not my second favorite franchise. I'm just giving props to it because the films are just that good.
They're really good, and it is, of course, something that can be enjoyed by all. Like we stated, it is, Army of Darkness and Evil Dead are movies that we started our kids off with in watching horror films. Because
we didn't start them with Evil Dead. We started with Army
of Darkness. Yes.
I was going to, as much as I like to scare the hell out of my kids, I was not going to let them be traumatized like I was as a kid watching Evil Dead.
They wouldn't have been, and they weren't when they did watch it, because they're also not religious. So I think it has a different effect on people that are religious. And I've said this over and over, just like with the movie The Exorcist. I feel like it definitely has a different effect on someone who is religious. They look at it way differently. They view it differently than us non-religious people do. Mm-hmm. We're looking at it just as a horror aspect. That's it. We're not looking at it from a religious point or with Jesus or exorcisms or demons or any of that. Mm-hmm. So it's different. Army of Darkness, our kids love it. If it just comes on TV, they will just sit and watch it. That's, kind of on the list. There's a few movies that they will just sit and watch, and that's one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, a couple of things that we talked about with Army of Darkness in a previous show is that it's one of Bruce Campbell's least favorite movie in the franchise because of how difficult it was to film it. So you can go and find out all those details on a previous Pop 5 where we talk about behind the scenes for the Army of Darkness.
Yeah, well, they had a lot of issues. It was really hot in the middle of summer, in the desert, and then they had some complainers. And
they had people sneaking off to have sex on set.
Yeah, that too. Because that seems like what you want to do in the middle of a hot desert when you're all sweaty and gross.
Mm-hmm. Now, last week, if you didn't catch it, we shared at least 5 of the copycat films that almost copy the Evil Dead scene from scene, sometimes clothing, almost everything is exactly the same about it. So the influence of this franchise and Sam Raimi it goes unnoticed, I think. I don't think people talk about it just how much he has influenced the horror world and upcoming filmmakers.
Yeah, and that list was narrowed down twice. Because I found 15, I kind of brought it down to 7, and then we chose 5 from those 7. So there's a lot of influence out there when it comes to Sam Raimi and Evil Dead and all, and Ash.
Yep. Love it, hate it, bad, good. Any person that is willing to, like Sam Raimi and crew, take $1,600 and bet it on yourself, my hat's off to you. So don't forget, there's a couple things that you need to do, and that is
like, comment, subscribe, share,
and stay groovy, as Bruce would say. Every video that has 25, 50, 75, and 100 likes, you'll win stuff. And then at 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000 subscribers, you'll win stuff too. It's like a video game. The higher we go, the bigger the prize. So
it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, that's true. Watch, win stuff. Until the next Pop 5, see ya.
See ya.